Hi, Tim Two Wheels here, and on this episode of the KLR650 Maintenance Series, I'm going to show you how to change the oil in your KLR. So stick around and we'll get started right after this. Alright, so just to review before we get started, for anyone who has never changed the oil on their KLR650 before, there's a few key things you need to know. And this is the location of everything. The oil level sight glass is right down here. You'll see there's a mark across the bottom. That is the absolute lowest that you want it to get. And then the marks on the top is your full level. So ideally you want your oil to be up around that top level, and that is with the bike setting up straight and level. And you would want your oil level to be somewhere in between those two marks. Full, it's going to hold 2.5 liters, and that's indicated here on the case. So that's your oil level sight glass, very important. There's no dipstick like in your car. You just want to look at this sight glass to see what your oil level is. Second, this is the oil filler cap. So we would unscrew this to add oil to our bike. And then this plate right here is where our oil filter is. We'll be removing these two bolts in order to remove this plate and to pull the oil filter out. And then lastly is the oil drain plug. And I'll show you a picture here. Underneath the bottom of the bike, the oil drain plug, and it's toward the rear, more on the left-hand side of the bike. All right, so those are the four main things that you need to know in order to change oil on your bike. So the first thing we're going to do is to loosen the oil filler cap. And I like to go ahead and just remove it. And then we're going to set that aside. And then next, I'm going to remove the drain plug in the bottom and drain the old oil out. Okay, so to drain the oil, I'll use a ratchet to get in here and loosen the drain plug. And I have a bucket underneath here. I just use an old oil can, a 1 gallon oil can with the top cut out. Now I have my bike up on a motorcycle jack. You don't have to have it up, but it does help, I think, to drain the oil here. So I've broken it loose with a ratchet. I'm going to hold this under here. Unscrew that, and I'm hanging on to the oil plug as I pull this out. Now you see why I have on latex or rubber gloves. So you want to look, I have a magnetic oil plug in here, so you want to look for any debris. What I have here is very normal. I don't know if you can see it on the thumb of my glove here, but it's just very, very mild residue. Nothing chunky or really grainy. So I'm going to go ahead and wipe that off. Now some of your bikes may not have a magnetic oil plug, and that's okay. It's just I prefer those because hopefully if you're getting any metal shavings or cuttings in your engine, you'll pick those up on the oil plug. Not all of them, but you'll at least be able to get a good idea of the condition of your motor. So I'm just wiping this off nice and clean so that when I put it back in the bike, it'll be ready to go. So several minutes have gone by, and you can see that the oil is just now a dribble at this point. You don't have to wait until it stops completely. I'm going to go ahead and put my oil plug back in the bike. So now we have our oil drain plug back in, and it is torqued to the factory settings. The specifications on that is shown here, but it is 29 Newton meters or 21 foot-pounds for that oil plug. So the next step is using an 8mm socket. I'm going to remove these two bolts here holding the oil cover, the oil filter cover on. Now One thing you'll notice is on mine, this tab here, one of the ears on the cover filter had broken off. It was already cracked and broken when I got the bike, and I haven't bought a replacement cap yet. I have tried using JB Weld to fix this, and it didn't hold. So I am going to replace this cap, but for now the bolt has enough purchase on this side. It hasn't been a problem, hasn't had any leaks. So I haven't been in a hurry to replace that. But that is something to be aware of and be cautious when you are tightening sometimes these surfaces that it mounts to are not flush, and it is very, very easy to crack these tabs. All right, so you'll notice that on this cover there is a little tab here, and that is made to get your screwdriver under the back side and kind of twist. Again, you want to be kind of careful. This has got an O-ring on it that sets inside this oil filter housing. So we're going to go ahead and work with this and get this off of here. So as you work around, just be very careful and just slowly wiggle it and just work it out. And there we go. So as you pull this out, you notice there's an oil ring, and this seats right inside there. Now when you're putting this back on, you'll notice that there is a little arrow that points up to align, because there are holes here that have to align with holes within the filter housing. So let's set that aside, and now you can see inside here, this is the oil filter itself, and this is the mounting tube. So that assembly comes out. You should be able to get it and work your fingers. If you can't, just take something and gently reach inside and get it to start out. You shouldn't have to pry. So just to show you, now this is the old filter, and the mounting tube is this little metal piece that sits inside and sticks inside that hole back there in the back. You can just push either way to push this mounting tube out, so it comes out of the filter. You'll need this to put back in the bike. So let's set our old filter aside. And just want to show you here a couple things about this mounting tube. First of all, the mounting tube has a recessed shoulder on one end. That's very important when you put this back in. You don't want to put it like that. Make sure that this recessed shoulder goes in and it sets inside that tube, or that mounting hole inside there like that. Additionally, there is, you'll see there's two holes here, and one of them has a plunger in it. That is called the oil filter bypass plunger. And what happens is, if for some reason that your filter is too stopped up, enough pressure, this will allow the oil to bypass. So take something and just make sure that that plunger is free and is moving. I'm just taking a small screwdriver and just pushing up in here, and it shouldn't take much pressure. It is spring loaded, but you'll see you want to make sure that plunger is free and not binding. So that's important whenever you change your oil. The way it works is there's a metal plunger inside here, and there's a spring that goes up, and this is a metal pin that just runs all the way through the body of this mounting tube, and it just presses against that. It's not rocket science, but you do want to make sure that plunger is free and moving clearly. All right, so one thing I like to do is to wipe all this down with a clean shop rag and just get it as clean as you can. And also inside the oil filter housing, it should be clean. If you have a lot of debris in here, you want to be aware of that, and because that would be an indicator that you're getting a lot of problems in your engine potentially. So with the new filter, what we're going to do is dab some clean oil on our finger when we put this back on. And on the rubber grommets inside here, you want to just put a little bit of oil to lubricate that grommet. and then we want to put our mounting pin back in. I prefer to stick the non-recessed in. This is a fairly sharp shoulder. I don't want to do anything to damage the grommets, and this end is sort of rounded as you can see. So I like to start with that end, just push it back in the filter. And I like to just push it to where it's flush for right now. What will happen is we want to give this room to seat, and then we can push the filter all the way up against this. So now we're just going to reinstall the filter. And it's in, the mounting pin is in its hole. So now let's just push the filter in, and now it's seated all the way back. There's a bit of a lip here on the inside of the mounting case, you can tell. So if your filter goes all the way back to that lip or to that recess, then you know you're all the way seated. It's very important. So next I'm going to reinstall my oil filter housing cap. I will note that the manuals specify that you replace this O-ring with a new O-ring every time you change your filter. I'll be honest with you, I have not done that. This O-ring is in good shape. I change my oil very frequently, and I've not had any issues with it leaking or seeping oil. What I do is take a little bit of oil and rub around there just to help lubricate that, and helps it seat and seal properly. We want to take our oil filter housing, again with this arrow pointing up, align the mounting holes, and then just work with it until you feel it seat. Put a little pressure. There. Just using the palm of my hand, nothing hard, and then you can twist and get this aligned. Again, it's very important that you align this with this arrow up to make sure that all of the holes inside are lined up properly. Next, it's just a matter of reinstalling the two 8mm bolts that came out of it. Always get your bolts started by hand first to make sure you're not cross-threaded. And then with my ratchet, I'm just going to tighten these very gently just to snug it up and tighten them evenly. You don't want to crank down on one side, and that's the case with anytime you're putting a cover back on. And now I'm just going to work gently here and just snug these back up. You don't need a lot of force on this to keep these tight. And the only reason I'm so delicate is because I know one of these is broken already, and I just want to be very careful with it. That's good. Okay, so we've drained our old oil out. We have put a new filter in, replaced the filter, and our oil plug is back in the bottom and it's torqued to specs. The next step is going to be to actually just pour our fresh oil in. Now, one note about the oil capacity of these engines. If you are replacing the oil filter, it's going to hold the full 2.5 liters that's indicated on the casing below. Every other oil change, when you don't replace the oil filter, it's only going to hold 2.2 liters, or the equivalent of 2.3 quarts. So now let's go ahead and get that oil in there. All right, so the next step is to pour our clean oil in. A little bit about oil. I am not endorsing one product over another. As you can see, I am using the Shell Rotella T in my motor. It's the 15W40. I'm not recommending that you use any one oil or oil filter. Everybody has their own opinion about what oil to use. There are a lot of guys out there who have been running Rotella T and these KLRs for a long time and had good results. I'm a big believer in the Rotella T because we used to own semis, and I ran Rotella T in a lot of the big diesel engines. I also have a Power Stroke diesel pickup. I've run nothing but Rotella T in that since I've had it. I have about 250,000 miles on that truck now, and without any issues. So you make your own decisions. You use what's specified by the factory if your bike is under warranty. But you'll see me pouring Rotella T in here and using the K&N oil filters. Again, I'm not going to get in that dogfight about what oil and what filter is best. This is just what I happen to use. You use your own judgment and you put in your bike what you want to run. So now we're just going to add this oil back in here. Now I happen to be, I buy this oil by the gallon jugs here, as you can see, because I do use it in my truck as well as my bike. And you can buy it in the quarts. It might be a little easier to pour in the quarts, and plus you can judge by pouring 2 quarts plus 0.6 of another one. The gallon jugs have markings here along the edge with quarts on this side, liters on this side, so I can tell how much oil I have in there. So that is down to where it needs to be. It seems a little full. We'll start the bike up, let it run for a bit. It'll pull oil into this filter and pump, and you'll see your sight levels come back down normally to where they need to be. Some of you may want to put in like around 2 quarts, start the bike up, let it run. I go ahead and just put the 2.5 in when I'm changing the filter, and then when the bike starts up and runs, again, it'll circulate it through the engine, get it into the filter housing, into the filter, and then you'll see your levels be normal down there. So I just like to wipe it up, make sure I didn't spill any oil this time, make sure we get it all nice and clean, and then we'll put our filler cap back on. Very important. And again, this doesn't have to be super tight, just snug it up to where it's not going to come loose, because if you do, it may be really hard to get off the next time, and you may risk breaking that cap. It's just a plastic material. All right, so as you can see, this was a very easy job. I hope this gives you information if you've been concerned about changing your oil. For many of you guys out there who are beginners with KLRs, as you can see, this is a very simple job. It is so important to change your oil and to keep good, clean oil in your engine. I cannot stress enough how important it is to keep good oil in any engine, not just KLR, but whether it's your car, your truck, a boat, whatever it might be. I'm just a big believer in clean oil. It's so cheap to do, and it's so important to the life of your engine. There's really no reason not to. So as always, this is Tim Two Wheels. Thanks for watching, and that's how I did it.